Hi, and welcome to Brew Report. My name's Lawrence, and each week I take you on a fresh journey through the world of beer at brewreport.co.uk. Big changes afoot this week. And it's not just the haircut, which is a big change and admittedly long overdue. No, from earlier this week, the pubs have been back open and it's been possible to go outside, sitting in beer gardens, sitting outside, ordering takeaway pints and having fresh cask conditioned ale again, having fresh beer on draft again for the first time in months. It's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited to get out to more pubs and do my reviews from there. Until then, I'm going to be tasting a much more traditional beer, and one that's quite close to home for me. This is London Pride. It's a beer, it's an amber ale from Fuller's, based over in West London. It's 4.7%, and this is possibly the first beer I ever tried. This is the beer that my dad would crack open at precisely 5 minutes past noon on a Sunday afternoon while he was reading the newspaper. And the great advantage of him reading the broadsheets was that while he was hiding behind that and doing his best to ignore that very small, annoying child on the floor next to him, I could sneak up and dunk my chubby 3-year-old fist into his pint before sucking and gumming what beer remnants were left on my hand afterwards. I'm planning to drink it normally out of a glass this time, but I wouldn't rule out the fist technique for later if you're getting interested in that. If we look at the exterior of the bottle, this is a very different beer from how it was packaged more than 25 years ago when I first tried this beer. It's a little bit more modern, but still fairly traditional. You've got the name front and center, the sort of very bold red and white packaging. It's very sort of heavily leaning on this being a London beer, an English beer, a British beer, which is perhaps overcompensating a little because, of course, Fuller's was acquired by Asahi not too long ago, and now, while it is still based in London, it is technically owned by a Japanese firm. But I'm assured that the beer within is equally good, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing and tasting what's inside. So all of this, pouring this, is bringing back actually some pretty strong memories for me, because when I was old enough that I was no longer just dumping my fist into my dad's beer, I was granted the rare privilege once in a while to pour his pints for him. I realise now what a mug I was and how convenient that must have been for him. But part of the process there was learning how to pour a bottle of beer in the way that he liked, and it was all about making sure the glass was clean. It's all about getting the right level of head. And I got it into my head in the first instance that, the heads that, traditionally beer has a very big head, so I often thought I needed to just dunk this beer into the glass, and was told in no uncertain terms, no, you shouldn't do that. I then made my best effort to pour the beer as slowly and as carefully as possible, so no head remained at all by the time I brought it to him, which again, wasn't quite right either. What we've got here, I'm hoping at least, is a happy medium between the two. All right, so in terms of appearance, this, for me, and this is probably due to my long history with this beer, this is the platonic ideal of what a beer should look like in my mind. It's this sort of amber, tawny brown in colour, completely transparent. There's very little opacity here at all, beautifully clear, with a white, loose foam head on top. The aroma is, again, bringing back a lot of memories for me here. It's a weird mix. At first, it's almost overwhelmingly quite metallic for me. I get a lot of that sort of iron, metallic, sort of artificially carbonated flavour coming off that aroma of carbonation coming through. But beneath that, there's malt, there's caramel, there's sort of a biscuity, toasty, malty character to it as well, which is really quite inviting, quite warming. And I, very excited to see how this holds up on the palate. The palate is simple. It's very malt forward. You get a lot of this sort of roasted barley, toasted barley malt flavour, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toast, a little bit of biscuit, but ultimately the vast majority of the flavour profile here is coming from that malt base. There's a touch of hoppy bitterness in there as well, but not enough to make it too complicated. This is a reassuringly uncomplicated beer, very much focusing on that malt experience. On the finish, there's more of the same. That sweetness intensifies a little bit. You get a slightly stronger caramel note on the finish, more of that sort of biscuity, toasty malt character, but very much malt forward throughout the entire tasting process. If I sort of think back to how this beer holds up, how this compares to when I was drinking it as a precocious 3 or 4 year old, licking it off his fingers, I've got to say it's certainly a different experience drinking it now. Back then, my palate was very different. I was much more sensitive to the hoppiness, the bitterness, and that was almost overwhelming in a way. Now, where I drink this and I think, well, it's no IPA. This is a sweet malty beer. I'm not getting that hoppiness particularly coming through, just a very small touch of it. So in that sense, it's interesting to see how things have changed. Does it hold up in terms of quality? I can safely say I like this beer a whole lot more now than I did as a 4 or a 5 year old. In terms of pairings, for me, and again, this is probably an emotionally charged point, but I think it does still stand. This is the beer that my dad would drink while the roast dinner was in the oven and getting ready to come to the table. So for me, this is the perfect beer to have alongside roast dinner, roast chicken particularly, but just roast dinners generally, that sort of roast potatoes, the gravy, the Yorkshire puddings, all of the trimmings there, that sort of very traditional, quite stodgy food, traditional pub grub in that sense, I think pairs very well with this. But equally, it pairs very nicely as well if you're just having it with a handful of dry roasted peanuts. That's enough for me from this week. What I want to hear is, what did you think? Do you know and love London Pride, or do you think it's a little bit passé? What was your first experience with beer? Do you want to share that with me? Let me know in the comments down below, or drop me an email. And as always, if you liked this video, please do check out the rest on this channel. And for more hot and fresh content on the world of beer, check out brewreport.co.uk, where I post fresh content every week. And until next time, happy drinking. We'll see you in the pub.